I was blown away that there was a medication that was available for treating alcohol addiction because I'd kind of been scouring the internet and asking people and doing my research for years about how do you quit drinking? You hear these stories of people that quit drinking, and believe me, I was trying and I couldn't do it. But when I learned about Naltrexone in 2017, it was hard for me to get the prescription initially, which is another story, but I finally got the prescription, and right away, I would say the first week or two on the medication, I could see that I was craving alcohol less and I was starting to drink less.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of How's My Drinking? Good morning, Marcella.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Good. Another exciting episode. Today we have a very good friend of ours, Katie Lain. Katie, if you want to say hi.
Hello, glad to be here.
Happy to have you.
Awesome. Well, Katie, we are super excited to have you here. So I'll just get it started with our first question for you. And, we've known you for a while, but obviously our listeners haven't. So we would love for you to just introduce yourself a little bit and just kind of tell us a little bit more about your background and just your journey with alcohol use disorder and your recovery and what led you where you are today.
Yeah. So we all know each other because we work together at Rhea Health, which I no longer work there, but that's where we met. And I loved working with them because it was actually kind of part of my healing and recovery story from alcohol dependence in a big way. So, yeah, I struggled with my drinking for nearly 10 years, really my whole 20s, like that whole decade. Sometimes people see me and they're like, you're too young to have an alcohol addiction. But yeah, you can, start when you're 20 and waste your whole decade of, of your 20s. But anyway, what started for me is like, just partying, kind of thinking it was innocent. This is something people my age are supposed to do. I was really naive to how addictive alcohol was. I figured it was a phase I was going to go through. And then, like, as my life and career got more serious, I would, rein it in, so to speak. But what happened for me is a couple of years of kind of drinking and partying a lot, like a lot of binge drinking. I remember I tried to take a week-long break because I'd been drinking every day and I didn't even know when the last day was that I hadn't drank, and that kind of scared me. So I was like, oh, I'm going to take a 7-day break, kind of detox. And what surprised me and scared me was that week, that break I took, I did it, but it was really, really hard. Like, I wanted to drink every day. I was irritable because I wasn't drinking. I was going to bed early just to kind of not have to sit through the witching hour and the craving. And after that week-long break, I was really relieved to start drinking again. And that kind of started a cycle of me, trying to take breaks, whether a couple of days, couple of weeks, couple of months. And then I would, give in to drinking again and binge and just do things that I regretted. My drinking was having more and more consequences. And it seemed like the harder I tried to control it or moderate it or quit, the worse that it got. So that was just a cycle I was stuck in for several years and was feeling quite hopeless until I learned about Naltrexone in 2017. And I was blown away that there was a medication that was available for treating alcohol addiction because I'd kind of been scouring the internet and asking people and doing my research for years about how do you quit drinking? You hear these stories of people that quit drinking, and believe me, I was trying and I couldn't do it. But when I learned about Naltrexone in 2017, it was hard for me to get the prescription initially, which is another story, but I finally got the prescription. And right away, I would say the first week or two on the medication, I could see that I was craving alcohol less and I was starting to drink less. And I was on the treatment for a year. And over the course of that time, I truly unlearned my alcohol dependence and got to a place where I was drinking, started it drinking daily, a couple bottles of wine, binge drinking on the weekends, every day drinking. And then over the course of a year, I made it to a place where I was drinking like once or twice a month and effortlessly. I didn't want to drink more than that. And then I ended up going alcohol free in 2018, about a year after the treatment, because I just kept forgetting to drink and had no interest in it. And now it's been, like 7 years, 6 years since I drank. I've lost count now because of this treatment. It just changed my life.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, I know you mentioned you searched online and kind of came across Naltrexone. And I think like everyone's journey is a little bit different in recovery. A lot of people are kind of accustomed to, the norms of recovery and the whole abstinence. What is it that kind of led you to say, okay, I'm going to do my journey maybe a little bit different, right? I'm going to search and uncover medications. And I feel a lot of people still don't know about medications. There's probably a lot of physicians that don't even know either, right? And what it can and can't do. So I'm kind of curious, what led you to that? How did you go at that path in regards to like your journey, right? To start recovery?
Yeah. Well, I thought that the only option was like AA or abstaining, like regardless if you went to AA and worked the steps. Like I just thought that abstinence was the only option, meaning if you can't control your drinking, then you have to quit. And so, I tried that a lot. Like I would have like a horrible bender or do something that was terrible. And the next day I'd be like, that's it, I'm fed up. And I would sincerely mean it. Like, I'm going to quit drinking. I'm so sick of this.
Mhm.
And what surprised me is that I would really, really mean it. But then a couple of days, couple of weeks, I made it 6 months one time, but I would want to drink like so badly to where I was just obsessing on it. Like it was really, truly white knuckled, like, okay, just don't drink today. Just don't drink today. Avoiding people, places, things, TV shows, like anything was triggering me to drink. And so I was really confused. I really wanted to quit, but I couldn't because I was just mentally obsessing on alcohol. And so I would watch so many like AA talks or just talks on YouTube, TED Talk, like whatever, just to see like how are people doing it. Like I couldn't figure out, okay, you quit drinking, but how? Like how did you stay sober? And I never could quite get that answer from people. Like they would just talk about the process of quitting and how much it changed our life, but nobody was really talking about the mental battle that's going on, the craving. And so when I was trying to quit and I couldn't do that, I would try to moderate, thinking, okay, if I can't abstain, maybe I can set rules around my drinking. And I would try to moderate and I failed at it most of the time. Again, I would really sincerely mean it, but I'd fail at it. And that just led me to over and over again, like scouring the internet for an answer, like alternatives to AA, like how to really quit drinking, how do people stay sober? And that led me to, by accident, that there's a TEDx talk that talks about naltrexone for alcoholism. And I was blown away when I saw it because the way she spoke about her problems with alcohol, she talked about the craving and the obsession and the type of drinking she had. It just spoke to me. And I was blown away that there was a medication like that. I didn't even conceive to search like on Google, like medications for alcohol. I just didn't know it was a thing. So I really truly just stumbled on it, and then that led me down this path of, okay, I wanna try this medicine, like, I've tried everything else, and a part of me was like, "This sounds, like, gimmicky," like, if and I get this comment from people, "If there was a medicine that really worked, everyone would know about it," and that's what you
No.
would think, but it really does work, and still nobody knows about it. I think I saw a stat that 2% of people who could benefit from medications for alcohol are actually prescribed them, and I still get messages from people regularly who say, "Oh, I asked my doctor and they refused it. They won't prescribe it," which is just insane to me. That actually happened to me when I first learned about it. I went to 5 different doctors in my area and they were all like, "No, you need to go to rehab. Like we might prescribe it if you're a candidate after rehab." So it was just this battle to finally get the prescription, which doesn't make any sense because it's been approved for alcohol for decades. It's benign, it's FDA approved. It's considered by some physicians like the gold standard of treatment. Yet it's still hard for people to get, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a question for you on some of the things you said. Me also having taken the medication and going through that. But before then, you mentioned that like having to do all this research for yourself and trying different things. I remember doing the same thing, like
Yeah.
supplements and whatever the internet told me that was going to help me do it, setting rules with myself and meaning it, but then not being able to do it. Do you feel like that adds to the shame of people like really reaching out for help from a professional and being like, I can't do this on my own anymore?
Yeah, I mean, I just got chills as you were saying that because I think the shame gets deeper and deeper every time we're sincere. Like that is really us, the person who wants to get this issue under control, the person who's really trying. And when we put forth our best effort and it doesn't seem to help, and in fact it gets worse, or I remember I just felt so out of integrity with myself because I would claim, okay, I'm gonna quit drinking, and I would tell people close to me, and then a week or 2 later, here I am drinking again. So it's like I love to be a person of my word, and so I just stopped telling people. Like, I would secretly quit drinking because I was like, "I don't want to, like, fail publicly again." But yeah, that shame when you try to moderate and you can't, and you try to quit and you can't, and you sincerely want to, and again, nobody's really talking about the neuroscience of addiction and the fact that there's a phenomenon known as the alcohol deprivation effect. There's research into it, people can look it up. Nobody's talking about that. Like, you're sober on the outside, but on the inside, you're still very much controlled by the alcohol. And so that was kind of surprising to me to really come to terms with like what was going on inside of me when I quit and not being able to have an answer for that craving that was just incessant. And yeah, that's where naltrexone was like a game changer. It really just caused me to fall out of love with alcohol. And when you don't desire something, it's really easy not to do it. I mean, that's common sense. But Yeah, the shame is unreal and it's not talked about enough, I don't think.
Uh-huh.
And society kind of puts like alcoholics are over here and they just need rehab and they have no self-control or they're allergic to alcohol or they have a disease and it's the rest of their life. And like for those of us who are like still functioning, like yeah, we're drinking a lot or every day, but like I still go to work, it
Mhm.
like that gray area or whatever you want to call it. There's not treatments offered for that. Or it's like it encourages people to wait till their drinking gets to that severe point where they're physically dependent and they lose everything and then they can finally get help. Like that's just illogical
Mhm.
to me.
Yeah. So one thing I want to say is I think a lot of people, I mean, they definitely know who you are from a lot of the videos you've done for Ria Health. So, right. So you've kind of, moved on and started your own thing, which is Thrive Alcohol Recovery. So you're the founder of that program. So you've been doing this for some time, right? And obviously, and like you said yourself, being someone that's in recovery. Um, at this point too, like what's the biggest misconception that people are having around just both AUD, maybe the medication piece of it? And it might not just be the individuals themselves, but I think a few things we touched on is like the fact that so little people know about it. It's also a level of education that's coming from other physicians, right? And it's not that, you know, they don't want to tell people and get them the help they need. It just some of them aren't even getting them the education themselves. There's probably
Yeah.
so many new medications that come out that people go knock on, a physician's door. Hey, we got this, we got that. But I mean, what's the problem here, you think? What's the shift that we could also do around the narrative to help people? I mean, obviously we're kind of doing that right within our own programs and everything we have, but how do we increase that, right? How do we get more people to know about it?
Yeah, it's such a good question because, I know Ria Health and me were a part of this organization that's recently been founded called the Naltrexone Alliance. And it's really like these leaders in the space that are putting their heads together to answer that question, really. And it's even one of the physicians on it, Dr. Volpicelli. He's been researching naltrexone for 30, 40 years. He is literally a lead researcher, lead expert, lead doctor on this medication. And even he is hitting his head against the wall. Like, why isn't this treatment more well known? It's just insanity. But I think, you asked, like, what are the common misconceptions? There are so many of them. And there is this question around, like, where could this like have a snowball effect? Is it because the doctors aren't aware of it? Yeah, that's definitely part of it. Thankfully, there are more specialized physicians like what's at RIA and other places that are, familiar with this medication and happy to prescribe it to most people. But then I still get those messages or comments all the time like, oh, I asked my doctor and they said this is a really addictive medication and I can't take it or I can't drink on it or they're not allowed to prescribe it or I'm only supposed to be on it for 3 months and then I can't take it more. Like I get these crazy comments or my pharmacist told me I shouldn't be taking it. Like I just see these comments all the time where maybe the doctor's willing to prescribe it, but there's like the way they're prescribing it doesn't align with what the research says, or often the doctor's not willing to prescribe it. And what typically people tell me that they say is that, oh, I'm not a specialist in addiction. You need to go see a specialist for it, which again, it's not true. Yeah, it might be better to see a specialist because maybe they're more
Mhm.
knowledgeable, but technically any doctor can prescribe it. So and I've been to a lot of addiction conferences as well, where like even though like I talked to several doctors at one conference and they're aware of naltrexone, but they don't care about it. They're like looking for the next shiny object. They're like, yeah, yeah, we've known naltrexone's been around. Big deal. What's next kind of thing.
Hmm.
And it's like it hasn't even been given a fair chance yet. And these
Yeah.
are literally leaders in the field who could probably make an impact if they cared and really recognized how powerful naltrexone was. So I think that the lack of awareness, lack of excitement, lack of education with doctors is part of it, but also everyday people. Like we've kind of been shown this narrative. I mean, like in my case, I just believed abstinence was the only thing and AA or quit another way. Like you have to abstain. And so a lot of people are still of that belief. Like I'm in online groups where I just see posts every day one again, or I made it
Uh-huh.
3 days, but then I drank, or I made it 8 days and I drank. Like again, it's that incessant craving people have. The reason they're going back to alcohol is because they really want to drink and
Mhm.
the want is just overwhelming. Otherwise, they wouldn't be giving into it like they are. So I think that's part of it too. But what do we do about it? I mean, I do think there's going to be a tipping point at some point where people like me, people like you guys talking about it, I hear from people every day, same kind of thing. Like, oh, I had no idea there was a medication. Why didn't my doctor tell me about it? Why isn't it more well known? And I think one thing Dr. Volpicelli said, who's heading up the Naltrexone Alliance, is he thinks it's got to be this grassroots movement where like people like me and people like Marcella and people that come to Rhea Health are like demanding this treatment because I mean, doctors are busy, not a lot of doctors will have this personal passion to like reach all their patients with it necessarily. They've got a lot to juggle. So if people like me and Marcella and others who have struggled with alcohol start to really demand this from their doctor and they can bring in the research to show how effective it is, or places like Rhea Health that are getting bigger and bigger to make medications more the norm as part of alcohol recovery. That's got to happen. But yeah, maybe it really is the grassroots thing where just little by little people like us are talking about it and it spreads through
Yeah.
social media and other things.
Yeah, I mean, even like when you said like the physicians themselves, right? If they sit down with someone and they uncover that they might have a drinking problem, right? Most of the time they're like, "Oh, well, I can't support you there. You got to go find your own resource." I mean, if you're a physician listening right now, I mean, there's Rhea Health, there's your program. So we're out there, right? I think we're all telehealth online based businesses too, where it's really easy to just refer someone to search for us and have them come to our pages and just, sign up and get to know us, ask questions and understand how, the treatment options can help. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Every one of us as individuals need to somehow spread it and kind of let people know that it's something that does help. And then I think the physicians need to just be aware, a lot of our programs exist and we're here to help. If they can't support it, it's understandable. I mean, just refer them over to us and we'd be happy to help.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I really hope that, I know we're doing something right, but just talking about it and it's sad that like it truly saved my life. Like I don't know if I would have made it to my 50s going the way I was, but now I don't drink anymore and it's because of this medication and the behavioral support and there's options out there. So I hope that by doing what we're doing, we'll continue to get the word out there and just change the narrative.
And Marcel, you don't take the medication anymore, right? Because that's a common concern or question like, oh, I have to take this for the rest of my life. Would you mind sharing?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great question. No, I actually don't. I think I was on the treatment for about a year, just like you were, kind of learning. I wanted to learn to be like a normal drinker, like quote unquote normal drinker, right? Because I couldn't. I had that issue of like, I would tell myself I'll drink 3 drinks today and I could never stop. So the medication helped me become a normal drinker, but then I just fully lost interest. So no, I haven't taken the medication in over a year at this point because I don't want to drink anymore.
Uh-huh.
And that's like a mind-blowing concept for people who've struggled with alcohol because I get emails
Yeah.
from people, they're a year sober and they still want to drink every day, through traditional approach. And so to get to a place where you just genuinely don't want to drink, it's hard to even understand what that would feel like with,
Mhm.
Yeah.
from someone who is experiencing alcohol use disorder currently. So it's life-changing, and, I don't know about you, but for me, it was like, I love that I didn't have to quit drinking on Naltrexone, like, it was such a
Yeah.
gentle way, like, "Okay, I can start this medication while I'm still drinking, and it's gonna help me drink less," and so over the course of a year, I just drank less and less and less. If someone would've told me day 1, like, "Oh, you need to quit drinking eventually on this treatment," or, "You need to quit drinking," that would've felt like too much pressure for me because I know
Yeah.
like, quitting was impossible for me, and I wasn't ready to quit at the time. I wanted to start by reducing, and to my surprise, after a year, I just was like, "I don't wanna drink anymore. This is, like, unbelievable, honestly," but
Mhm.
that was one
Yeah.
of the great things about the treatment. It was very gentle and gradual, and it allowed me to make gradual lifestyle changes, like, as I was drinking less. I started to have new hobbies and coping skills and just ways I would spend my free time gradually, which I love that about it.
I was actually going to ask that question to the both of you. I mean, taking the medication, I would assume it also like kind of opens you up to be like, oh, I'm realizing these are things that were leading me to drink, right? Now that I'm not craving it, I'm not going here or I'm not hanging out with so and so that
Mhm.
would push me to that limit. It also changes like your life, right? In kind of a, like you said, a better way. You open up to more hobbies, you start uncovering what's leading you to a lot of your drinking. And I think that's where like a lot of the coaching, therapy, and stuff comes into is the medication helps a lot. And I mean, people are probably going to have questions, right? I'm sure both of you, when you're taking the medication, you were probably doing a lot more research afterwards, right? A physician will tell you to probably start with a certain amount of dosage, possibly increase or decrease as time goes by. So I think having that level helps too. But yeah, I think mainly I'm curious, like if it, and you guys probably already answered this, but it does open up your eyes, right? You start seeing all these other changes and stuff.
Yeah, it definitely does.
Yeah. I mean, I'll just speak from something we say in Thrive, like our program a lot is we're meeting the medication halfway. Like, I think any person, and this is a critique I get on my videos. Yeah, right. A medication alone isn't going to fix, your drinking. And they're right. Like, the pill alone isn't going to do it, but it was the tool, the foundation that made it possible because the way it works to just heal your brain of the alcohol dependence like you said, Ari, it's like you have extra space in your brain and your heart so you can think more clearly. You're not just fighting an urge to drink every day. I remember my first alcohol free day on the treatment. Usually I'd go home after work and open up a bottle of wine and I was like, I don't really feel like drinking today. Like, what else am I going to do? This is kind of weird. And I ended up like going out on a walk and I was just kind of excited about that fact. Like, oh my gosh, a day where I don't want to drink. Like, this is so bizarre. But it does become like, I had to change a lot of things in my life because I was drinking heavily for 10 years and my life was built from that foundation. So I had to change jobs, gradually change friends, change how I spent my time. And that was a process. There was some really difficult times because when you've been numbing out and relying on alcohol for years and years, there's things that come up that you have to feel. You have to learn to sit with your
Mhm.
emotions rather than numb them out. Like naltrexone will help you not want to drink, but it's not gonna like make you avoid feeling uncomfortable things. You still gotta go through that. And one of the mantras I would say to myself is the only way out is through. Like I have to go through this in order to be able to cope with it in the future and not like reach for alcohol all of the time. So there's definitely more to it than just the medication, but the medication is like the key that unlocked the door, like, it made it possible. Without that, I mean, I tried all of these techniques, mindful drinking, coping in other ways, doing different habits, having non-alcoholic drinks, all those, like, mindful drinking techniques that you hear everyone say in any article
Same.
online. I tried those without naltrexone, and it was, like, pointless, it felt like, but with naltrexone, I could actually do those things because I wasn't obsessing on getting a drink anymore. What about you, Marcella?
Yeah. I mean, no, that's so true, and I relate so much because, I actually had been in trauma therapy for years before I started taking Naltrexone. So I was doing the therapy and, the supplements and trying to all like the mindful drinking things, but Naltrexone was truly what, like you said, the key that unlocked the door for all the other things that I was doing to work essentially, right? So I can definitely relate to that, especially when you said, for you, it was a decade. For me, it was almost 2 decades of using alcohol to numb in different ways or to have fun in different ways. When you think about it and you're like, you want me to quit drinking completely? Like, that sounds terrifying and
Mm,
impossible. So it was really nice to be able to gradually get to that point,
yeah.
like truly meaning it and feeling it instead of like trying to convince myself that I didn't want the drink. Like I truly just don't want the drink anymore. And I think that's life changing. And that actually leads me to my next question to you, Katie. Being somebody that has been both a participant and a leader in recovery programs, like what do you think is the most important factor in helping somebody like make a true long lasting change and not something that feels like you said, like, oh, 3 days, but today's day one again, like to really make this a lifestyle change?
Yeah. Well, the medication is like a key component, but if someone's like already committed to taking that, for me, I think that one of the things that, or a couple of the things that help me, I would say, and I definitely, encourage our members to do in our program is a lot of the inner work to get in the right mindset and heart space to be prepared for this change. Like, what's the difference between someone who goes on naltrexone, but they don't really take the medication correctly, or they're not willing to change habits and they're not really seeing a lot of results, versus someone who goes on it and like you and me, we just heal. And in the course of a year, we're like, this thing is behind us and we are truly free from the problem. Like, what are the differences between those? And not to say this is the only thing, but I really do think that for people to understand their why behind why they want to do this treatment and spend time, like a good amount of time on a regular basis, doing that inner work to understand why am I drinking and like really get to the root of that. I would always like write things down and just keep like a growing list or a growing journal because I found that like I would have these realizations or insights and then it was easy to forget them in the moment when I had a bad day and I just wanted to drink, for example. So understanding why I wanted to drink, understanding and asking myself like, what happens if I don't make this change? What are the consequences of my drinking? What does it look like a year from now if I don't make this change 5 years from now? And like what is the future I want for myself? Like cultivating that vision and honestly using our imagination to visualize that all the time. Like if you talk to any personal development person, and I think there's research to back this up even, where when we're visualizing something, our brain doesn't know the difference between the visualization and actually doing it. So getting excited about that future where alcohol is no longer an issue is another big piece of it. Because, I've worked with some people who are of retirement age, for example, and they've kind of lost their purpose in life because they're not working anymore. And not everyone, but sometimes those people struggle on naltrexone because they don't really have a purpose or meaning in life. They're just kind of bored and they start drinking every day at noon. And so, if that's your case and alcohol is like the most important thing in your life or the most fun thing in your life, like it's really easy to keep drinking and drinking too much, even on naltrexone. So, just to summarize, I think, understanding the why behind why you want to do this treatment, like what are all the reasons you want to change your drinking? What are all the horrible things that alcohol's doing in your life? And like be honest with yourself and use that as a reason to stick to the treatment. Remind yourself of those things regularly and get really excited about your future and seek out something meaningful. I remember I read Man's Search for Meaning. It's like a classic book by Viktor Frankl. I read that on TSM, or excuse me, on naltrexone. And it just changed my perspective on things because one of his quotes that he has in the book is like, and I'm going to butcher it, but it says something like, if we don't have a sense of meaning in life, we're going to distract ourselves with pleasure. And I was like, that is it right there. Like when I was drinking a lot, I didn't really have meaning in life. Like I would get jobs where I knew I could show up hungover and not really apply myself. I would just spend all my free time drinking. And so I think for us to have something that's meaningful that we can plug ourselves into, whether it's work or family or volunteer or hobbies, whatever it is, I think that's really important to the healing journey.
And that could be one of like going back to the earlier question we had about misconceptions, right? There could be people out there that are taking naltrexone as medication to help, but kind of like what you're pointing out is like there's no effort, I guess, or they don't want to really, right? Maybe get better, or to your point, they haven't really decided these are things that I want to see changed in my life. And I think what happens is those are probably individuals that maybe it doesn't work out for them because, it sounds like it's not just going to be the medication alone. While it helps, you still need to have an understanding of like, okay, what's your ultimate goal? What are things that are affecting you or leading you to drinking? So combination of the two is what's going to help you. So I think that's probably a good point you just made too, is like you have to have ideas of what you want different in your life. And then the
Yeah.
medication itself is going to help you get there.
Yeah, and I always encourage people if they don't feel because it's okay. Like if you're not ready to start the treatment yet, you're just not ready. Like you don't need to be hard on
Mhm.
yourself. But I encourage people if they're in that place to just do that inner work and understand, like, okay, like how do I feel about my drinking? What's good about it? What's bad about it? What would happen if I had more control? Just having those honest conversations with yourself, whether it's journaling or just time and reflection, it can sometimes help people get into the right mindset to feel ready to change. Because I've worked with people, they start naltrexone 2, 3, 4 times, and then finally they were ready. So if they're not ready yet, that's not a big deal. But I do believe that someone has to really be ready to make this change, like with anything in life. If
Mhm.
you want to make a meaningful change, you have to want it for yourself. It's not like anyone can force you to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so true, and I'm glad you brought it up because we do speak to a lot of, like, family members of, they're just desperate to get their loved one the help they need, but the reality is, unfortunately for them, the person needing the help has to be committed and just ready to do it, or it does not matter what you do, it's just not gonna work.
It's so, yeah.
So I'm really glad that you brought that up. And then Katie, I know that, you've been to a lot of conferences and you're really plugged in the, alcohol use disorder recovery world. So where do you see this treatment being in the next like 5 to 10 years? And how do you feel like technology is really gonna fit in, as we continue with AI and all these developments?
Yeah, that's interesting. I haven't really thought about that, but I think that like with telehealth and technology becoming like more and more the norm, people becoming more familiar with like a telehealth doctor. I mean, I think COVID really helped that get a lot more awareness. Like it was still kind of unknown before that, but I would imagine, with telehealth gaining more access with companies like Ria Health and others that are out there offering medication. One of the doctors that I know that does this treatment, he's like, this medication is going to get easier and easier to get. So I think that right now in the US, like with RIA, people can get the medication in any state that they're in. And so as
Mhm.
that momentum kind of continues to snowball and people are aware of telehealth, aware more and more of medication, perhaps it will move the treatment of alcohol use disorder to more of an at-home online thing. A common concern people have, like if they're considering traditional treatment or even just going to AA meetings, is like you have to, if you're going into treatment, you have to uproot your life and tell everyone and leave your job and your family. And for the majority of Americans, that's extremely unrealistic. You risk losing your job, you're not there for your family. And like if you look at the data, those treatments aren't very effective. Like a lot of people end up relapsing and have to go back again. So, if people have the option to do something from home and use medication, that's going to be incredible. And with the help of AI, I mean, like I use AI a lot just to like ask questions or help me write things about naltrexone in this treatment. And it's amazing what the AI knows about it. So like as people get more and more used to using that, they can really educate themselves about naltrexone for alcohol use disorder. So my hope is that this treatment is so much more affordable than traditional treatments and it's so much more effective. And so it would be incredible to see just more and more people become more aware of it. I feel like there hasn't been this tipping point yet that a lot of us are kind of anticipating at some point, but it is growing. Like if you look at the Google search trends for naltrexone, it just
Mhm.
continues to climb up. So hopefully that will continue in the trajectory the next 5, 10 years.
Yeah. Katie, we want to thank you for being on the podcast. We want to give you some time as well, see if there's anything you want to kind of add or, tell our listeners. And at the same time, if you could also tell people how they could reach out to you, right? And if they want to connect with you as well, I want to give you a couple of minutes for that.
Yeah, something I'll say that's on my mind is that naltrexone is an incredible treatment for people of all stages of alcohol use disorder, all types of drinkers. I've just seen it work for people across the board from, the woman who's having 2 glasses of wine every night, but she has to have those 2 glasses to the person who's literally drinking like a fifth of vodka every other day or something. I've just seen it work for people across the spectrum. Some people tell me, oh, well, this would never work for a real alcoholic, like whatever that means. But I've seen it work. And again, back to what we were saying about, people who have that internal motivation and desire to change. If someone's really ready to commit and wants to see this change, I think it can work for them. So I just encourage anyone, no matter where you're at with your alcohol, like you don't have to wait for it to get worse to do this
Hmm.
treatment. And even if you feel like your drinking's at a really bad place, like this is something that can still work for you. And yeah, so I used to work for RIA Health for 3 years, and it was such a huge piece of my healing journey, honestly, because right when I started working there, I was like at the end of my journey with naltrexone and I was hardly drinking anymore. And as I talked about like man's search for meaning and finding purpose, like it just gave me huge purpose to be able to work at an organization that, the mission was something that was so near and dear to my heart and still is. So it was really vital in my healing journey. I feel very grateful to be able to have, spent 3 years there with the team. And yeah, I ended up leaving RIA Health to start Thrive Alcohol Recovery because I really wanted to focus in on naltrexone. I know RIA uses different medications,
Hmm.
different treatments and things like that, but my heart and passion is really around naltrexone because it just completely healed me. And I also learned the nuances of the treatment. Like we were talking about meeting the medicine halfway. And so I wanted to work with people just using that specific protocol. So Thrive is an online program that's centered around that treatment. And we have coaches who most of them have been through the treatment themselves. We bring in therapists to lead workshops, tons of videos, resources, peer support. It's all online. It's when I think about like running it and building it, it's like the program I wish I would have had because I kind of navigated this on my own. And like I wish there would have been something I could have plugged into. So that's really what Thrive offers.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you. Thank you for being on the show. I'm sure we're going to probably bring you back again and maybe we could have another discussion, see how much has changed and, where we're at with the future of naltrexone. But again, thank you. And Marcel, anything you want to share too, or for we?
No, just really thank you for your time. And honestly, like you've been such an inspiration in my own journey and everything you've done, and just, putting yourself out there just to get the word out and just to tell people like you're not alone. A lot of us, have been through it, and alcohol addiction doesn't discriminate. So, thank you for putting yourself out there and continuing to help as many people as you can.
Yeah. Thank you, Marcella.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Have a good one.
See you next time.